Welcome into Up in the Rafters, a podcast brought to you by Inside Carolina this college basketball season. I'm Taylor Vippolis hosting this, and as always, joining me, he's a national champion, the Final Four's most outstanding player, Carolina basketball legend, Joel Berry. Joel, Carolina goes on the road to Clemson, Little John Arena. They lose by 20 points, run out of the building, which has become kind of a trend for this North Carolina team in some of these bigger quad one games. We see it against Duke. Now we see it against Clemson. Biggest takeaways watching that?
Yeah, I mean, Clemson took Carolina behind the woodshed and just gave it to them, man. It was you could see the discrepancy in talent, which is so rare with going against a Clemson like that, a team like that. You usually see Carolina come out on top. If it's a close game, you can usually see that the talent is better than Clemson. And last night it was the total opposite. I saw just lack of enthusiasm. That's what stood out to me the most. It seemed like for the first time, it seemed like RJ Davis was being a leader, like wanting to get the guys like, come on. There were a couple of times where he got the guys in the huddle and you could see him talking and kind of seemed like he cared about what was going on, and everybody else just kind of looked like deer in headlights, like it is what it is. So outside of the X and O's, I just saw it just looks like a team that's just defeated. And there was just no fight. And obviously Clemson is a good team, but Carolina just seemed like they just another game where they weren't into it.
Yeah, and it's crazy to say that when you know what's on the line for North Carolina every time they come out in these games, when you're looking at bracketology projections, and it's kind of been a continued trend for this team where at the end of the first half they go on a scoring drought of like over 4 minutes. Clemson ends the half on a 28-10 run, really putting some distance as they go into the locker room at halftime. What did you see at the end of the first half that not only Carolina wasn't able to score, but Clemson was able to put some distance between them and the Tar Heels?
Yeah, the one thing that stood out to me is we struggle against bigs that can step out and hit the three. I thought back to the Elon game where Elon had guys that could step out, and there was I might be drawing a blank, but I thought there was another school they played early in the season that had guys, lower level schools that had guys that could step out and hit the three. We struggle against that, and that's what Clemson did. Look, they're the number one team in the ACC in 3-point shooting, and that was really the difference maker. While we were shooting really tough shots, and Taylor, when I say every single shot, like I'm not exaggerating. I think every single shot that Carolina took in the first half was contested, and just like even if it wasn't contested, getting to the shot was very difficult. There was no open shots. There were no shots that where you said, "Oh, that was great ball movement to a really good shot." There was none of that. And Clemson is a great defensive team where you have to move the ball to be able to find the best shot available, and they just didn't do that. And then you go down on the other end, and I will go to say the defense was non-existent. I mean, Clemson was getting whatever they wanted to. It's like when is it enough when you have a 5 guy that's stepping out and shooting the three? Like, is someone on the backside going to stunt? Like, I'm just really starting to question the intelligence of the players and them looking at what's going out on the court and being able to make up for some of the mistakes or some of the things that where you see a trend like, all right, we got to be able to find and figure this out. Like in the first half, it just seemed like Clemson just did whatever they wanted to do.
What did you make of Carolina going zone to start the second half and try to switch things up and ultimately proving pretty much just as ineffective as their man-to-man defense?
Well, that's what you want to see. If something's not working, you want to see some adjustments to try to change the rhythm of the game. Get Clemson to be a little stagnant, throwing that zone out there, because teams do tend to get a little stagnant when you're going up against a zone. But it's hard when you have a team that can space you out, which is opposite of what Carolina has, where they don't have 3-point shooting. And so Clemson does. And it's like, all right, you go a zone. Not only are you giving up 3-point shots, but it's also harder to rebound where we have a hard time rebounding. So I don't fault the changeup, but regardless, even if you go into a zone, defense is a will and want to. And regardless of what they did yesterday, it just seemed like they just didn't have the will and want to even defend, no matter what they were in.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about this game, not only from a basketball perspective, but a fan perspective, an alumni perspective, a Letterman perspective, the sense that I get, at least from taking the pulse of everybody, is that the Carolina fan is not used to feeling this level of embarrassment when it comes to the results that the team is putting out on the court. And it's become now, 3 of the past 4 years, Carolina is a bubble team. And for me, I'm not speaking, obviously not speaking for you, and we could debate where Carolina is at with this. But when I see and watch this North Carolina team play, and I listen to Hubert Davis in the post-game press conference, what I feel like I'm watching is a coach that looks defeated. The results are going to get to anybody, no matter how positive you try to remain. And it feels like a coach that is in a slightly over his head, where I'm not entirely sure that hiring a GM is going to all of a sudden make Hubert Davis this much better coach. And you could say, like, maybe it will, but the evidence is that Carolina is 20-32 in quad one games, and that includes a 1-10 mark this season, to where even if you toss out this season, it's still a losing record against quad one games, which is not something you would normally see for North Carolina. And especially because most of the reports are saying that the GM position is something that the athletic department is kind of pushing onto the Carolina basketball program, because they're looking around and realizing that things aren't working as they're currently constructed. So for me, it feels like a GM in putting a GM in place is just delaying where this Carolina program is going. So I guess for the fans that are, for the portion of the fan base that is kind of they're already out on the coach, and he's going to have to try to win them back over when Carolina does get a GM in place and tries to make changes this offseason. What would you say the argument for Hubert Davis would be to continue being the head coach at a school like North Carolina?
Well, I think the argument is going to, all right, what has he done positively? You look at the recruiting, he has brought in some high level recruits, including this year in Ian Jackson and Drake Powell. Even Elliot Cadeau, which is, you tend to forget that this is really his freshman year, because last year it should have been in high school. So he was a high level recruit. You got a high level recruit coming in Caleb Wilson next year. That's a positive. Another positive. You make it to the national championship. You in your first year. And I know before that, the season kind of it looked rough. But however, when you look at what the substance of that change was during that year, all it took was one player, and it was Brady Manning, giving you a guy in a position where Coach Davis' offense thrives at that 4 spot, having a basically a hybrid type of player. And then you come back, yes, you missed the tournament, but what didn't he have? He didn't have a Brady Manning. He didn't have someone playing at that 4 spot. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leakey was playing the 4.
Yeah.
But he's not a shooter. So I think where people, I realize the frustration is and I'm rightfully so. And I know you feel the same way, Taylor. Regardless of the X and O's, the fight, the intensity is not up to par in the standard that Carolina demands. However, when you throw that out the window and you look at, okay, what needs to change, it's all personnel and what Coach Davis needs on his team to be able to be effective. He needs a guy at the 4 spot. Another point is Brady Manning, Harrison Ingram. Those are his 4 guys. What did those guys bring? They brought outside shooting, and they were able to play in the post. They were able to do both. He doesn't have that. Nor does he have a Cormac Ryan. Nor does he have the RJ Davis that can play in space and be able to knock down threes. So I really do, to your point, I know that there's a lot of frustration. I realize the 20-32 and quad 1 wins. Right now, it looks quite embarrassing. However, I really do think that it's a personnel problem. And I think hiring a GM is going to solve some of the problem, because now you can get back to the X and O's and being able to coach and not have to be the negotiator and also be the head coach at the same time. But I also think that you got to look at your staff. Are your assistants up to par? Are they doing the job that they need to do? You got to make sure that you're bringing in guys that understand the culture. You got to build an identity. I don't think Carolina really has an identity. There's nothing that they hang their hats on other than playing fast, which doesn't work. So there are a lot of things to think about, but moving forward, I think that Bubba Cunningham has to believe in the vision and the direction that Coach Davis wants to take this program. And as long as those guys are on the same page, I think Carolina has the foundation to turn it around. It's just being able to, like he said, it's not sustainable in just banking on the traditional way of Carolina basketball. Things have to change, but there is some positive. But right now, it's quite embarrassing. So I realize I understand why the sentiment is the way that it is.
Yeah, the identity point is a good one, where you have a head coach who's going to be going into year 5 into a program, and you're looking at the way they play, and they don't really have anything that they can necessarily hang their hat on. And
Exactly.
I know it's hard to project what the roster is going to look like next year, but you bring in a GM, you fill in spots to the best of your ability. Maybe players with draft decisions come back. Maybe players, instead of transferring out, stay. Maybe players that you need to get out of the program transfer out. So I guess, factoring all that in, would you be more surprised next year if Carolina is a bubble team or a title contender?
It could. I mean, it can. Obviously, I don't want it to go away to the bubble. If it goes to bubble, then I'm like, all right, something major has to happen. However, this is the environment that we're in, and I know Louisville got a new coach and whatnot, but they were able to turn the program around and look at what's going on this year. I think Coach Davis and he can do that. It's just you got to have the right resources. You got to have the right players coming into the program. You got to have the right players that fit what it is that you want to do. And I think they have what it takes to be able to turn it around. But if they become another bubble team, then I realize, like, all right, something major needs to happen. Make a coaching switch or something. But you never know what will happen in the offseason. But the reason why I keep going back to resources is because I'm thinking about all the people that they lost out on this year that could have made a difference. You lose out on Cliff Amore that went over to Alabama. That's now the second team in the country. Imagine his presence in the block. Like, even just having a lob threat, someone that can protect the rim. You'd miss out on the James Adu, who he's at Arkansas right now. I wish he was with Carolina. You miss out on the Adu Thero. You miss out on, basically what I'm saying is, that's why the resources are important, because basketball is a game where one guy, like a Brady Manning, can change the whole outlook of your team and make it look totally different. But it's about having the right personnel, and Coach Davis just does not have the right personnel for what he wants to do.
Yeah, the personnel has been a huge issue this season. Um, I guess the perspective I would take on it is from Bubba Cunningham's perspective, where the question that I would kind of be asking is the hypothetical that we were talking about a bit before we got on when we were talking, where it's like, if you have a hypothetical where every coach's contract was up at the same time and everybody had to start over and everybody had to start fresh, how many schools with top 25 aspirations call Nate Oates, call Bruce Pearl, call Dan Hurley, Rick Barnes, Sampson, Kelvin Sampson, Matt Painter? And then the flip side of that, if you're Bubba Cunningham, how many schools with top 25 aspirations call Hubert Davis? Because I think that in part is why Carolina needs a GM right now, because you're Carolina basketball. This is supposed to be the pinnacle of college basketball. And when you take where they went to school out of the equation, I don't know how many coaches in the grand scheme of college basketball you get to before you start talking about Hubert Davis. And I was trying to think of like a comparison to try to put it into like relatable terms to the fan base. It's like, if I was offered the CEO position of my company, and I've been there for 5-10 years, but I'm not like this senior level person, and it comes with a substantial raise, I'm taking that. I'm taking that every time without question. But also in 4 years, when you're not getting the desired results and people started questioning me, I'd be looking at you at the same time and being like, what did you really expect? I never had this CEO type level experience of running an entire company by myself. And other comparable companies, if they're never even interviewing me for a CEO position, how did I get into this position where I'm now the leader and in charge of running an entire company? And maybe some years you prove people wrong with big years, but overall it does feel like Carolina, this is the situation that Carolina basketball is in, where you took a chance on a coach that didn't have the head coaching experience, but at the same time you took a chance on somebody without the head coaching experience. But this is still a program that's a top 5 job in college basketball. This is still a program that has national title aspirations every year. So it's kind of like you took a chance on somebody and you want them to grow into this position, but you're also juggling like, hey, this is Carolina basketball. This is something that has to be handled with great care. So yeah, it's I'm not envious.
It's a lot, man.
I'm not envious of where Bubba Cunningham is.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you gotta be open to making an adjustment and changing with the times. And I said it on the last pod. It's like, how does a St. Bonaventure hire a GM before Carolina? It's like, it doesn't make sense. And then also it's like, all right, well, you got a school down the street that recruits the same players you do and are fighting for the same players, and y'all don't hire a GM. It's like, why are we so far behind? And that's where I'm starting to think, is this a problem outside of just Coach Davis? Like, I know we're seeing, like, it's like me. What people see on the court that's the final product, but they don't see all the stuff behind the scenes. That's where the pudding is made. They don't see all of that. That's why I'm like, what we're seeing is 2 steps beyond what is really going on and what we really need to be paying attention to. I'm not envious of what Bill Belichick was able to get when he walked through the door. Carolina basketball has always been a staple at Carolina. I love the football team. I went to every game. We had to go to every game. I love the football team. But we all know we can't sit here and lie and not act like Carolina basketball isn't Carolina. Why is it now we're making an adjustment? That's why I said Coach Davis, I realize he's going to get the blame. Whenever anything happens, the head coach is always at the front. But why are we reacting? And that's why I said I realize the product is embarrassing right now. The fight, the effort. I get that. But all of these other things that's going on right now is a problem that should have been solved a long time ago. And this is what happens, to your point, when you're a CEO of a company and you're not on the cutting edge or the leading edge of making changes. When you're already other companies are doing what it is that you should have done. That's what's going on right now, and the results will show up.
Yeah, Carolina in major catch-up mode right now when you're looking around college basketball and some of the premier programs. But quick break so I could remind everybody about
We need a break.
Yeah. Quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you can visit Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. And if not, no worries. You can go online to johnnytshirt.com. They have everything that the Carolina fan could possibly want. The hats, the T-shirts, the jerseys, you name it. They've got it. I'm on their website right now. Joel, front and center, shop Carolina baseball gear. It's almost time for the Diamond Heels. And there's a lot of new arrivals for a lot of great gear for Carolina. I'm looking at it right now. Jordan brand, the Nike brand.
We got a lot of buzz for the baseball team.
Yeah.
We got a lot, top 10, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of fans' expectations are slowly turning over to the Diamond as this season goes, and come March, their schedules could open up and have even more time for Carolina baseball at this way. But it's great people, great customer service. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders. All right, we're going to take questions from the fans. Thank you to everybody that submits questions on Instagram when we put it up the day of the recording. First question comes from BW Parker 87, and he asked, Joel, in your opinion, is this season salvageable, or does it have a sinking ship type feel to it?
From the product that I'm seeing on the court and the effort and body language says a lot. Effort says a lot. And some of the same mistakes that I was okay with at the beginning of the season, I'm not okay with right now. The plays that just look like that make you just want to pull your hair out because they happen often, and it just how is that able to happen? Like, I'll make it quick. What summed up the game for me yesterday, and when I already as a player clocked out, is when Ian Jackson came off of the DHO and the ball hit his body. Even if you thought that the ball hit your body, I want to see you darting after that ball and going to get it. And Coach Davis looked at Ian Jackson like, what in the world are you doing? And the result of that, he walks off and he's just looking like yeah, it's whatever. That's why I'm like, I don't know if this season is salvageable. I saw something the past 3 tournaments with all of the bubble and whatnot, and teams that get in. There has been no team made it to the tournament who has had more than 9 quad 1 losses. And Carolina now has 10. I don't see where they can make up for it. And I just don't know, based on what I'm seeing on the court, if this can turn into a tournament type team.
Perfect follow-up to that response that you just had. Lisa Sexton 0 asked, what's going on with Ian Jackson? And for some context, he's been held to single-digit scoring in 6 of the past 7 games, including 3 points in the past 2 games combined on 0 for 11 shooting from the field. And this is coming off a stretch where felt like you could pencil him in for 20-plus points every game.
It's part of sports. It's part of, Taylor, as you know, When you get more attention, what happens? Or when you're playing to the level that where you become dangerous, now all eyes are on you. And it's like, oh, so you can only operate when it's easy? You can only operate when the defense or the teams really don't know about you yet? And so now it's like I I know my scouting report on Ian Jackson. Keep a body in front of him. He goes in sometimes and he's just out of control. And then it's like, all right, now the team says, okay, what they're looking at Ian Jackson, what can we live with? We can live with him shooting contested three. But what we're not going to live with is him getting down the court and beating our defense and getting to the basket and using that athleticism. Just part of scouting. And so now you got to make an adjustment. And that's where basketball IQ comes in. So that's no complicated answer. It's just that's part of basketball. That's why you have a second and a third counter as far as individual moves. And then when you're running plays, that's why you have a second and a third counter, because teams are going in taking away the first option. And now he's a first option type of player. So now you got to adjust, and he just hasn't adjusted.
Yeah, he moves up the scouting report, and if these are things that you're seeing at ESPN in those Bristol studios, you know the teams that are scouting him full time for their 100%. Job.
Yeah,
that's their
job. That's their job. You're watching a ton of film, and every coach knows exactly what he wants to do. Now it's about getting the players to execute that, and the players have done a great job in knowing what he can and can't do.
Yeah, and I think it makes it even more impressive when you see some of these freshmen across the country have those stretches of games that Ian Jackson did, but then be able to sustain it for the entire season or majority of the season, knowing that you are getting moved up the scouting report, knowing how much attention to detail defenses are putting on you. And that's not even necessarily a knock on Ian Jackson, because he warranted getting all that attention. And now it's about figuring out how to still play within yourself and play within the offense to maximize what you're doing out there on the court. The next question comes from Samuel J. Doster. Why do we continue to play too much help defense and leave guys wide open for 3-point shots? I think he's talking specifically in that Clemson game, the Clemson big, 4 of 5 from 3. And the point that you were making earlier, it does feel like that pick and pop has hurt this Carolina team a good amount this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's why the guards have to be better at the point of attack. You have to be able to get back in front of the ball. But that's why, basketball isn't just verbal communication, it's nonverbal communication. Also, the big has to have the awareness. Okay, my guard, like you can anticipate when someone's getting back in front of the ball and when someone's basically beat and you need the help. Like there are times where the guards are doing a great job of getting back in front of the ball, but the bigs are just hanging out in la-la land. And it's like, that's where the nonverbal communication and the nonverbal awareness is like, okay, I see my man coming back. Let me get back to this guy that's at the 3-point line that has been killing us the whole first half. But also I question the backside defense. Like whenever we had a dominant guard that we knew could get downhill, but we also had a threat on the perimeter in the big, we would sort of it's called I forget what the name of it, but you kind of hedge or and stunt at the big to be able to get them to move the ball the other way. And so I just think the bigs kind of lose awareness of the guards getting it back in front, and that's where we're getting beat.
All right, let's take a quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Congruity. Congruity is the leading provider for Tar Heel business owners, payroll, HR, and employee benefit needs. Inside Carolina listeners can get a free payroll and HR assessment by emailing Matt at Congruity. Email is matt@congruityhr.com. That email again is matt@congruityhr.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. Final question comes from Aaron Pettit 32. We're going to end on this one. Joel, can you give us some hope for the future of UNC basketball? Where are you putting your hope for the future of UNC basketball in a time where a lot of the fan base is fighting each other, a lot of the fan base is giving up on this team as it's currently constructed, giving up on the coach as it's currently constructed? Where's your hope for this UNC team?
Yeah, well, one, I will say that's the beautiful thing about this game is that it's just like in the midst of games, there are runs. There are a lot of runs in the team in general and your program in general. Now, I will say this: I don't want these type of runs. I want runs that are, where there's a timeout, and it doesn't drop this low. But I'm hopeful. It's still one of the best programs in the country, one of the most winningest programs in the country. To your point, this is a top 5, not only a top 5 job. This school is on a lot of big time recruits lists. And I just think in this environment, all of these coaches, all of these ADs, all of the programs are guinea pigs right now. It's a reason why these big time coaches are getting out, because it's tough right now to adjust, but you have to be willing to adjust. And I'm very hopeful that with, what the NCAA does in bringing some rules and regulations to all this, to where kids just can't jump here. And just because of the money, I think that will help. I think having the GM will help. And I just think now that, sometimes you got to have everyone's awareness to realize what needs to change. And I think that right now in this environment that we're in, everyone now has their antennas up, realizing like, hey, we did have really good times. We need to get back to those. And so we need to do whatever it takes to be able to get back to those times. So I am very hopeful that Carolina basketball will get back to the 2016, 2017 years of Carolina basketball.
Carolina basketball back in action this Saturday at Syracuse, 6 p.m. tip, ESPN. We will be back next week to break it all down. Joel, man, appreciate the time as always, and appreciate everybody watching and listening.
Yes, sir. Go Heels.